Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video. In this video we're going to be taking a first look at Secretary Guo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's Guo as in G-W-O almost as the pronunciation. I do mess up these Typhoon character pronunciations. I do apologize heavily in advance and for my past discrepancies. I'm sorry. Henjen for instance, every time. But this is him as a 6-star character. We're just going to go over him basically. He has 2,455 attack, 2,202 defense, 2,400 HP. He is an alert character and his role is damage. Now we'll go across to the rush and it is 76 AP. It is called Perforating Shots. Deal 400% damage to one enemy and all adjacent enemies. Those enemies get 700 bleed damage for 3 turns. Now initially you may look at this and think this is extremely strong, even on a 6-star character, but this is going to be weaker or very similar to 6-star Alpha's Rush in terms of the AoE damage. His damage overall is a lot lower. His damage is 2,455 with 30 veteran rings, whereas Alpha is 2,807 with 30 veteran rings. Alpha's percentage damage is 325, so it's going to be around the same, maybe slightly better for Guo, but when it comes to Alpha's AoE damage is very weak. I said this when she was on the 5-star wheel, she was kind of underpowered in what you needed from her. You'd have to have the defense down, you'd have to have the attack up to make that part of the rush a big thing on Guo here. It's going to be exactly the same deal. However, the bleed on top is where it's going to tip it over. 700 bleed for 3 turns, that's 2,100 damage. In the 6-star era, that's really strong, obviously. That's probably going to do as much, if not more, than the 400% damage adjacent attack that he's going to bring out. Now, against 6-star characters, that's going to be strong. Against S-class characters, not so much. So as a 6-star, he's not going to be super powerful, but if you have a Lacerator, you can get that up. You can obviously build quite heavy bleed teams these days, especially if you're running Raulito. This guy will go with him quite well. So you can stack that bleed up insanely high with this sort of character. Now, when it comes to his active skill, this is where it is kind of nice. It's kind of strange at the same time. It has an initial cooldown of 2, cooldown of 3, and it deals 650 burn damage for 2 turns to a line of enemies, which is actually pretty nice. And up to 2 teammates get 30% AP. Now, obviously, having someone who does AP gain to other teammates is nice, but he's a damage dealer, and we've seen this a little bit recently where damage dealers have been given support actives. I think we've got one with Krista, where she should be pretty pure damage. The same sort of thing can be said for this guy. And unfortunately, they've got some weird support character active skill. I guess we did have that in the actual original Gen 2 6-star era when it was Michelle, for instance, had an AP gain active. Now, the burn damage is really high. I think it's one of the highest burn damage on skill or on active. I think we have got 1,750 on weapons. You know, we've got Wayland and we have got Rhodey, but this is one of the best burn damage, especially from a 6-star so far. Now, his leader skill is kind of special, and it reminds me a little bit of Raulito. All alert and fast teammates, so the same leader skill as Michelle in terms of who it affects. Get a huge bonus to AP when attacking, but all enemies get 50% heal reduction for 3 turns at the beginning of each wave. Now, personally, I'm generally not a big fan of heal reduction unless it's 100%. But if you're building a bleed team, I can see where it's quite important. You can have other controllers in your team. You can, of course, have decaps. You can, of course, have crosshairs. So revives aren't as big an issue as they once were. The accessibility to character like Raulito as a 6-star and Henjen as a 6-star is great. And both of those characters work with this guy if he's the leader, because obviously he's alert and fast for the teammates, and both Henjen and Raulito will fit in that team instantly. As 6-stars, they'll work great just because of their crosshairs. As S-class characters, obviously the damage output of those characters is massively increased. Now, Guo does not have an attached weapon, so you can just fit a stun gun in his hands straight away. This is the 3rd promo alert character, and I think we've only had 1 strong character so far, 2 fast characters and 1 tough character. So we're racing ahead on the alert characters already, and I'd prefer there were balance between the promos. We didn't have balance in Gen 2. It was just every single promo pretty much was fast or alert. They did not balance the promos at all. They were racing through Generation 2 so quickly, and S-Class was pretty much inevitable because they just pushed it so hard. Now, with S-Class characters, there should be balance. They should be the rarer thing that they said they were going to be. They are every 2 weeks, but we're already getting a lot of alert characters, and hopefully they just dial it back a bit and get some strong and tough characters in there just to balance it up a little bit. Now we'll look at the S-Class version, and of course S-Class versus 6-star, everything just gets buffed up a little bit, but the stats get massively boosted. He now has 4,044 attack, 3,988 defense, and 4,281 HP. He is of course going to remain as an alert character, and his role is still going to be damage. Now we'll go across the Adrenaline Rush again, and we'll see what's changed. It's called Bloody Deceit. The name always changes. Recharge rate remains at 76 AP. The damage output gets boosted slightly to 450% to one enemy and all adjacent enemies, and the bleed gets boosted from 700 to 850. Now, it isn't that big a boost in my opinion. We've seen much bigger boosts on other S-Class characters. Now, when we go back to the 6-star, like I said, in terms of Alpha's power in the 6-star era, I think Guo's pretty much going to be the same sort of deal. He's going to be the Alpha of the S-Class era, where he's going to be quite good. Obviously, with buffs, the damage is going to be quite nice. But he has very low attack stat for an S-Class character. When we compare him to Arav, he's got 500 less. Compare him to Priya, he's got 1,400 less. So his attack stat is quite low, and that's generally going to happen with AoE damage like this. Adjacent targets, you don't want someone having like 7k attack stat in that situation, because it will just be instant elimination, even with the slightest buffs, even without them potentially. So it comes down to the 850 bleed and how powerful that's going to be, and I don't think it is really that powerful against other S-Class characters. It destroys 6-star characters without a doubt, but against S-Class characters, you're looking at 2,550 damage over 3 turns. And you've got characters that can do actives that can heal 40% HP to an entire team. So that completely counters this. You have some even 6-stars that can do cleanses of bleed. We will no doubt see more cleanses of bleed come in the future, because we have a lot of bleed characters right now in the S-Class era. I think this is the 3rd or 4th at this point, including James. So to make this really powerful, obviously you're going to need a lacerator. That's when this will get dangerous, because that 850 will get doubled to 1,700, and then that can be doubled again to over 3k, and that's, again, the last turn it will be 6k bleed, and not many S-Class characters are going to be able to survive that. It does bypass defense, and there's quite heavy defensive S-Class teams at the moment, especially around Pete. Just the amount of defense he can get, the amount of HP he can get, so this is quite a good combat against that. Will we start seeing bleed resist run? Maybe in the short term, while bleed seems to be quite prevalent within the S-Class characters. You know, Raulito, Hengen, and now Guo, the combo with those three, and the fact that they can all work in the same team now as Guo as a leader, that's going to be pretty dangerous. And then you've got Shiva, for instance, who's probably one of the better lacerators. Martinez, again, as well, can work behind Guo. The laceration is going to be great, so that bleed damage can stack up really, really high. Now, when we go across to the active skill this time around, it does get buffed up a little bit. The cooldowns remain the same. Initial cooldown, and number of uses. The burn damage remains the same, 650 burn for 2 turns to a line of enemies. Now, the last bit does change, however. Up to 2 teammates gain 60% AP now, which is obviously very strong on attack or defense teams. It doesn't really matter. It means they're going to gain their rush with 1 attack pretty much. Generally speaking, regardless of whether you're on a defense or attack team, you will gain 50% of your AP with 1 basic attack if you built your character properly with weapons and leader skills. Now 60% will obviously take you over the top, so you could potentially have commands come in. You could potentially, after the first turn, because obviously this can come in the second turn, you can active with this guy and 2 characters can get their rushes. So a lot of power potential there just based on the active skill. But like I said, in the 6-star version, it goes against the premise of a damage dealer. So again, I don't think long term this guy is going to be a damage dealer. He's going to be more support role, and the bleed's just going to be nice to get things going. Now the leader skill has been buffed up a little bit. All alert and fast teammates get a huge bonus to AP when attacking still. And all enemies get 75% heal reduction this time, rather than 50% for 3 turns at the beginning of each wave. So in a raid, that would just be for the first 3 turns, and then that second part's null and void. The second part in Raulito's is exactly the same. So if you can survive those first 3 turns, the leader bonus is actually not as effective. It is also not as effective as a lot of leader bonuses, because it doesn't actually boost the characters on your own team that much. It's just sort of like trying to counter the enemy a bit. And while that is nice, it's, like I said, it's limited time, so it's debatable whether you prefer to have 40% attack, for instance, or you'd prefer to have this heal reduction. If you're building a bleedish team, you don't generally need attack, but you probably would prefer defense if I'm honest, so it's questionable. As a defense leader, this guy would probably not be that useful based on the leader skill, just because most people don't rely on heals on attack, they rely on speed, and you'd probably have a lot of rushes deal with the defense team on turn 3 before they'd have to revive, before they'd have to heal anyway, so I'm not really sure about this character as a leader on defense. I think his place is generally going to be on an attack team as a leader. Now, as a support character, like I said, I think he's mainly going to be a support character long term. I would say he can be on defense and attack, especially until S-class everywhere, just because he can hold a stun gun, which is always dangerous. He has got quite balanced stats, so he's already quite defensive. And as people are still attacking with 6 stars to a certain extent, that 850 bleed, even if it doesn't get lacerated, is going to be monumental against attack team 6-star characters. So this is Secretary Guo. He is an S-class character. Do tell me your thoughts on him as a character, his rush, his leader skill, his active skill. He is another character from the Typhoon series. He may well be one of the last characters that we see from the Typhoon series, but we'll have to wait and see. That is the end of my video though, guys. Like I said, do comment your thoughts. Thank you very much for tuning in, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.